Good morning to one and all. Today's topic is related to jet grouting. Normally, jet grouting is also known as soil crete. It is used in the purpose of strengthening soil by the help of artificial agents, so that it is called as jet grouting or soil creting. Generally, we are using some quantities of soil with the help of cement for the purpose of stabilization, so that it is also called as soil cement stabilization. The jet grouting has two quantities of names. Those two quantities are soil crete and this soil cement stabilization. First of all, we have to know what is jet and what is grout. Normally, grout, we all know a grout is a cement mortar, but in case of jet is normally utilized in the fluid mechanics. The jet flow, that means the fluid is flowing like a jet in the pipelines and others. A fluid flow which is passing through a small opening with a high speed and a high pressure is needed to produce a kinetic energy required for jet through a small diameter nozzle. Why? Because these kind of jets, why we have to use for the purpose of production of electrical energy. Normally, this jet of water is pumped on the vanes of turbine, so that due to the pressure exerted due to this jet, the vanes are simply rotating. Due to those rotational forces, the total turbine will generates electric power, kinetic energy into electricity. So that here we are using a jet, that means simply the force exerted by the flow of fluid. Here also simply we are using some quantities of materials with the help of fluids. Normally, whenever we are using a material, the material is having some less quantities of water, but here we are using some what more compared to normal mixes, so that those material will having a flowable property. By using those flowable property, we are pumping that mix to a larger distances and larger depths of, but means below the ground level it is a larger depth, above the ground level it is a larger distance or height. It is a total phenomena about this jet grouting. Normally, jet grouting is a process of construction which is used for the purpose of flowing the material for high pressure. That means flowing the material at a high heights. Why? Because it is a fluid which having some flowable property due to the application of this pressure. Normally, the pressure will having a range of 40 to 45 megapascal to break up and loosen the soil at a depth of borehole, and to mix it with self-hardening grout to form columns, panels, and other structures in the ground. Normally, jet grouting is used below the ground level mostly. Why? Because we have to construct a pile foundation in the ground, so that there will be no vibrators and no proper mechanism to go beneath the depths of the soil. In case of those conditions, we have to use this jet grouting to construct these pile foundations and columns. Here what they are using is construction of a pile foundation or different kinds of foundations which are having a larger depth. They are using this jet grouting with a force of 40 to 45 megapascals. Generally they breakups, that means simply whatever the bond between the soil, those bond will be breaks due to this force exerted by the jet of fluid, and simply at a borehole, and the mix will be self hardening. Some of the chemicals are simply mixed along with these jets, that means along with these grouting materials like soil or cement or any other admixtures, so that due to those chemical properties the material will hardens very quickly and giving strength rapidly. and due to the self-hardening property and property of strength, the grout is used for the purpose of columns, comma, panels and other structures which are lies in the ground. And what is the advantage by utilizing this jet grouting? First of all, we are having a totally 6 advantages. It is applicable to almost all type of soils, whether it may be a black cotton soil or sandy soil, silty soil, clay soil or alluvial soil, whatever it may be. All the soils are suitable for the application of this jet grouting, and it is individualized in site treatments. That means in whatever the situation, it should be modified and it can be used in a random way. Next one, designable strength and permeability. The mix will give a proper designable strength, and it should permeability means it should be permeable through every member. That means whatever the gap is there, in those gaps also the materials will be flows with high flow. That means simply we are using these motors and other equipments for flow of this fluid, so that it will be permeable to all surfaces. And especially this jet grouting is used for the purpose of a layer treatment in some of the cases for large depth canals and other tunnels. We are having a problem of cracks, so that those cracks also arrested by these jet groutings. Normally the fluid will be passed through these gaps or cracks which are formed in the tunnels and canals, so that those layers also treated in a short span of time due to this utilization of jet grouting. And inert components only. Inert components means those components will not react with surrounding components, those will react with themselves only. That means whatever the materials we are choosing, simply those compounds are non-reactive, and inert components means those are simply non-toxic elements. Due to utilization of those materials in the jet groutings, those are not causing any harm, because if we are using some of the grouting materials, simply they will dissolve in the groundwater and they will contaminate the groundwater. But in case of this jet grouting, there is no chance of mixing. Why? Because those are simply inert materials. And last advantage is it is vibration free. Some of the concrete structures will require a large quantities of vibrators, and a needle vibrator or point vibrator or plate vibrators for the purpose of constructing to reduce the content of voids. But in case of these groutings, there is no requirement of these vibrators. Simply it is a vibration or free construction. Why? Because we are pumping the fluid with high flow and jet speed, so that the particles will arrange themselves in a rapid way and without any void quantity, and giving high density, so that it should not require any vibrationary measures. And the major advantages in this jet grouting are it should be applicable in limiting working spaces. Some of the equipments will require a large equipment. That means some of the processes will require large equipment, so that they will occupy more quantity of space and they will simply disturb the other atmospheric features and agents. So those are not, in this case of jet grouting, those are not done here. Simply the equipment will occupy less quantity of space and it doesn't cause any disturbance. Next one is it is possible to for a different soil crete element, because of its movement through height speeds, it will be give a possible of different short crete elements or soil crete elements, and different soils we have to utilize this phenomena. And maintenance free, there is no persons are required for the maintenance and this cleaning of equipments. For some of the equipments, the specially trained persons are required for those operational work and conditional working. But in case of this jet grouting, there will be a normal persons are essential, and normal persons are necessary for the purpose of this maintenance. Next one is the safest and most direct underpinning method. Safest means it will not cause any harm while the process is going on, and it is direct underpinning method. That means some of the equipments, a short quantity of equipments will be necessary for doing that work, and it will be able to operate around underground installations in service. Previously we have done most of the construction works which are having below the ground level. Those works will be done by using these jet grouting techniques, but here also it will be able to operate underground installations. Normally whenever we are having an structural repair, for suppose a structure is there, the total structure is sinking on one side, so that it may require some jet grouting below the foundation. Those kind of works also simply operated by using these techniques. Simply they have to do a short hole below the ground, that means parallel to the column and below the footing, so that the material will have to inject in a short way. After the setting, the total column and this foundation will rest on it, and the problem will be nullified because of this jet grouting. And it is more faster than any alternative methods. Why? Because it doesn't require any scaffolding works or any other man kind of works. Simply we have to inject the hole, and we have to go for this pumping of fluid with high pressure. It is the process of how this jet grouting will be taken care, that means takes place. Some of the equipments are simply we have to observe. In this particular diagram, the total process is going in 4 stages. On the first stage, simply they are doing a primary hole with the help of this pipeline. After that, at a particular depth, the pipeline will open, and the total blades will giving a particular diameter. For the diameter simply gives oscillations. Due to those oscillations, the material will be loosened. After the loosening of material, the total quantity of materials will be removed from the particular hole or diameter. After a period of time, the total hole will be filled with this content of grouting material with high pressure. Due to those high pressure and filling capabilities, the total material will be settled in a short span of time without any content of voids. In case of fourth, the total there are having two holes. In between the hole also they are doing another hole and filling with this jet coating material. Whenever we are having a structure with some cracks, particularly these kind of operations we have to observe in dams. Normally whenever we are having a high load, due to those loads some of the dams will have to face cracks. Due to those cracks, so they have to loss some quantity of water. To restrict to those loss of water due to these cracks, they have to fill these cracks by the help of this grouting method, whether it may be on above the ground level or below the ground level. That means above the ground level, simply they have to inject the material with the help of pipelines. That means a pipe is used to fill the material onto the dam. But in case of below the ground level, they have to choose this kind of technique. That means whatever the crack we are having, those parallel to the crack, we have to use this kind of technique, and we have to arrest the flow of water. This is also a simply process as same as a possible. That means in the previous also we are having same process, but the blades are simply different. Here only single blade with a straight portion is there. But in case of here we have to observe the total two pipes are utilized. The two pipes are simply creating two suction holes. Into the suction hole simply they are injecting two blades. Two blades are simply removing the material. After few hours of time, the total material will be replaced with this content of Z grouting material. And after the construction of this jet grouting, we have to observe how the material will harden. Normally for the purpose of jet grouting we are using this cement concrete. Okay, after setting of cement concrete we have to observe the shape of the particular hole. That means the shape of the hole and the diameter of the hole and the exterior shape. This is the example of how the hole will settles. For the purpose of curing, simply they are giving some quantity of water by making a small scale hole around the structure. Due to this seepage and penetration of water, the total structure will absorb some quantity of water, and they are getting strength due to this absorption of water. Here also we have to observe a person is simply measuring how much strength the foundation was obtained. Whenever we have, simply the person is simply observing what is the structure of this particular jet grouted pile, and what is the strength they have obtained, and what is the texture they have gotten. All those things simply they is observing, and he was noting. For every pile they have to note the data, and he had to compare how the strength was coming to each pile, and what is the average strength they have obtained, and what is the texture they are getting, how to modify those texture by different approaches. And next one is the parameters for jet grouting process and desired final strength of the treatment soil depending upon the different characteristics. That means different soils we are having, and different behaviors we are having. So that according to those soil properties and behaviors and problem conditions, we have to choose the material, and we have to adopt those conditions in the site. First of all, the desired final strength of the treated soil depending upon the number of characteristics we have obtained, such as soil type and technique we are using for the purpose of filling of material, and objective to be reached, and what is our final object, whether we have reached the object or simply we have arrested the object. Reached means we totally completed the process. But in case of granular soils, the high pressure jet will breaks up the grains through erosion. Normally whenever in the granular soils we have to observe, whenever the rainy season, the total top surface will be eroded due to this flow of water. But in case of this jet grouting, we are giving a high pressure for purpose of jets, so that some of the particles surrounded by this jet will be eroded in this particular case of granular soils. But in case of cohesive soils such as clay, the jet breaks the mass up into a small particles. High pressure is needed to produce the kinetic energy which is required for jet through a small diameter nozzle. So that we have to give, that means a large diameter pipes we won't have to use a small pipes, we have to use for the purpose of filling the material onto the holes. Why? Because if we are using large pipe means automatically the force will be exerted on all directions. If you are using small pipe means the force will be exerting in a single point, so that simply we have to give the total material on point to point, point to point, so that there will be no erosion to the surrounding soils, like especially these granular soils and cohesive soils. Whenever we are treating this kind of two soils, we have to go for this point source of fillings. High pressure is needed to produce the kinetic energy, which is required to jet the small diameter nozzle. After that, the speed of cement motor reaches up to 250 meters per second. Cement motor forms a soil structure like soil crete by break up the loosen and ground soil mix with a thin slurry. That means simply we are giving some quantity of pressure. Due to those pressure also, some of the surrounding soil particles will mix with this cement, and simply they are behaving as a soil crete materials. So that by breaking up and those materials we have to mix with the ground, and then we have to get a small scale of slurry that is also beneficial to us for the purpose of strength obtaination. Next one is the choice of most appropriate system and operating parameters are directed by, first of all, the type of geotechnical properties of the soil to be treated. Whenever we have to choose this ground improvement techniques, our first major priority will have to given to the soil conditions. That means we have to go and observe the kind of failure, and then only we have to take out the some of the samples, and those for those samples we have to test different kinds of tests we have to done. After the testings we have to compare the results. uh, by using those results we have to fix the type of ground improvement required for those soils. Next one is the radius of action of jet needed to achieve the required size of mixed in place structure. The desired mechanical, post treatment soil properties, the site constraints and its environments, the radius of action of the jet needed to achieve the required size of the mixed in place structure. That means radius of action means in some of the structures which are simply located as a radial directions, likely these pile foundations and columns, most of them are simply located as a radial directions. So that those things also we have to do by using this radius of action. Why? Because we have to form the shape of the structure as a radius, that means radial direction. The desired mechanical post treatment soil properties and the site constraints and its environment. Site constraints means some of the fixtures, that means through around the soil field we are having some hilly areas or ponds or trees or any other features. Those are simply called as site constraints. And environment, that means the temperature and topographical matter and these humidity levels in the atmosphere, all those also we have to consider. Next one is the jet system and the parameters are simply selected on to the basis of the energy of the jet needed to obtain a desired radius of action with proposed jet system, and grout formulation which will be needed to achieve the required strength in the grouted soil. The result on the strength of the columns is depends upon jet pressure inside the drill rod and fluid flow rate, cement motor composition and drill rod rotation and rising speeds, soil types, grain size distribution, composition and compactness. And the final one is the jet configuration, like a single or double or triple jet setup. First, seven major constraints are jet pressure. That means with what pressure we are simply pumping the fluid, and fluid flow rate for every minute how much quantity of fluid is flowing through the pipe, and cement motor composition, that means the ratio of cement to sand, and water cement ratio, and the drill rod rotation and rising speeds. Under the below ground level, we are simply the drill rod is moving, how many times the drill rod was rotating per every minute, and its speed per every minute, how many rotations it was taking, and quantity of soil, that means quality of the soil, and grain size distribution and composition. All those things we have to consider. These are the different actions, means a single jet, a twin jet, and a triple jet. Whenever we are using those kind of single jet, double jet, and triple jet, what kind of actions we have to observe in this particular kind of grout systems. In the single jet configuration, fluid performs the three functions of losing the soil and removing the excess, and providing a thin binder and significant proportion of kinetic energy and jet lost. In case of these twin jets, very high velocity grout jets is shaded in a concentration of the air. The radius of action of the jet in the same soil is sustainability increased. In the double of configuration, the air improves the performance in removing in situ soil by acting as an airlift. In a triple jet also same phenomena, but in case of high pressure pumps, the circuit of a triple jet configuration carries only water. There must also be second low pressure grout pump and a 3-line drill swing. This is the example for a single jet grout. Okay, in the bottom we are having drilling machine. On the one side we are having a single grout is simply spreading the material. Here we have to observe the bottom we are having drilling operators, and on two sides we are having this jet. It means on both directions we are having this jet. But in case of a triple jet, okay, both two kinds we are having grout, and in in addition to those two grouting areas, we are having an excessive of jet water air. This is the one of the example of how those will works in the site. This is the example of how much quantity of material will be passed through this each jet system. That means single grout, double grout, and triple grout jet systems. Jet 1, jet 2, jet 3. In the single grout jet system, they are having 10 to 100 centimeters. But in case of jet 2, they have to pass up to 180 centimeters. In case of jet 3, they have to pass 300 centimeters. This is the graphs they have to obtain by different jet systems. Depending upon the soil conditions, whether it may be sands or silts or clays, how those behavior we have to observe, and depending upon the geometry of the structure and properties, and which phenomena we are using, that means whether it is a shotcrete or jet or any other, we have to observe those phenomena according to these conditions of the soils, and whether their improvement is taken care or not. That means whenever we are using these jet materials, in some of the cases we are not obtaining a satisfied strength. In those cases, what we have to do and what is the further objective we have to consider. Here also different kinds of soils are there. For each kind of soil, what is the strength we are obtaining by using these jet conditions? First of all, we are having organic silts and peats. They are having some less values, that means starting from 0 to 250 we are having, and after that we are having clays, then after silts and silty sands, last one is sandy and gravels. The most of the strength will be obtained to these sandy soils and gravel soils. Why? Because their particle size is very high compared to remaining size of layers, and they will get those materials in a short span of way. But in case of those three conditions, organic seals will not having a reactive power with this jet grouting materials. And then clay is also, they have to simply eroded whenever we are using this kind of materials. And the silt is also, they doesn't bear those kind of pressures. They will simply deforms whenever we are applying the those amounts of pressures onto the soil surface. And how this jet grout column production will takes place. First of all, the jet grout column will be taken care by simply a 5 steps. In those 5 steps, first of all, we have to go for this drilling mission. The drilling machine simply drills the material. After that, the pumping unit simply pumps the motor from the carrying vehicle to this drilled portion. After that, the mixer means simply the cement slurry is prepared in the mixer, so that it will check the quantity of water and materials required, all those things, by the using of this electronical equipments. According to design mix ratio, they will simply mix those equipments, and they will transfer by the help of these pump line systems. And cement silo, a storage unit which can store large quantities of cement in bulk, and they will able to feed the jet grouting mixer sufficiently. After that, water tank, it will having a capacity of 15 to 25 tons for the purpose of storing of water. It is a total site. That means in the site itself, they have to set up the grouting methods. First of all, they have to store the cement. Why? Because if the cement is simply absorbing the surrounding atmospheric moisture, it will settles as a hard rock. So that we have to control those absorption by simply arresting the entrainment of this soil moisture in the atmosphere to the cement by storing in large vessels. Inside itself, we are having a cylindrical tank. The total cylindrical tank will stores the cement. That means some of the liquid cements it will stores. Here also we have to observe the step by step phenomena. First of all, we are having the cement storage tank. The cement storage tank simply carries this. That means it transfers the quantity of cement into this mixer. The mixer simply weighs, and it will transmits into the another machine. The machine will simply mix the all the quantities of this is cement plus aggregates plus this content of water plus admixtures. After this, those materials will be simply sent to this pressure equipments. Those pressure equipments will simply pumps those cement jets with the help of high pressure. These machines simply flowing those liquids into these holes. Here also we have to observe the point is there. The point simply flows the cement quantity into the hole with a high pressure. It is the total electronic, that means a jet grout pump with some drilling equipments. All those things we have to control with our hands. Why? Because it is an electronic equipment, so that simply we have to switch on and switch off for carrying the work. There is no required of any manpower for carrying those materials, and for blending purpose and for transferring purpose. All those work simply done by this machinery. After the process is over, simply we have to dig some quantity of soil, and we have to go for testing how much quantity we have estimated and how much quantity we have obtained. It is in a satisfactory mode or not. All those things they have to test. and different jet grouting application areas. Here we have to observe some of the bridges will having a tendency of corrosion due to this continuous movement of water. That means the total structures are simply in the underwater structures. So that underwater structures are having a continuous erosion and a seepage. So due to those also there may be some steel will be having degradation. To control those also we have to go for this kind of jet groutings around the piers and pier cap. After that some of the structures which are having the supportings, those are also have to shotcrete with the help of these jet groutings. In braced structures also we have to arrest this failure by using this shotcreting phenomena. And impervious shafts and foundation supports and deep foundations. That means deep foundations means for a large, that means a large span bridges are constructed along these river banks. In those cases also we have to go for this kind of techniques. And next one is water plugs. That means near to the dams we have to store this content of water for diverting purpose and storage purpose and for industrial purpose. They have to, in those conditions we have to use this water plugs. And in case of this tunnel constructions, the tunnels also have to bear large quantities of loads. And if there is any failure tendon, that means if there is any failure tendons, in those conditions also we have to go for this jet grouting. And these are the some of the applications underpinning of existing structures. Next one is downward extension of foundations in case of settlements or increased load. Next one is soil improvement when the structure is underneath existing structures. In case of vertical impervious barriers, impermeable base for excavations, bracings and stiffening of excavation underneath their base, connection of ceiling walls to existing structures and services and utilities. Next one, walls for cylindrical or polygonal excavations, horizontal screens and canopies for tunneling, soil stabilization between neighboring excavations or foundation works, and impervious connection of individual piles and pile walls. All those are the different applications of this jet groutings. The majorly we have observed things are downward extension of this foundation. That means some of the structures due to lack of this stabilization of the soil, the foundation will have to settle in a different portions. Those portions simply we have to arrest by using this jet grouting techniques. And the vertical impervious barriers, especially in case of rivers, and the horizontal screens of canopies of tunnels. These are also one of the best example for this jet grouting phenomena. Here how the phenomena, that means jet grouting for full column, for a half column and partial column, and a single panel wall, double panel wall. These are the symbols we are using for. These are the equipments simply using in case of this jet grouting, especially it is a case study. That means the study is going on in Turkey. Here we have to observe the total concrete mixing plants like operators we have to observe. Simply the concrete is that means the cement is stored in these vertical tanks. Those materials will have to mix after any mix, that means after any work is there for the purpose of this jet grouting. Simply they will give the try mix and they have to go for working. Simply these persons are measuring the dimensions of these jet grouted columns onto the structure soil conditions. Here also simply a persons are monitoring how those structures are appearing. That means is there any deviation in between the two structures, in between the column also, that means around the column they are having two structures. Simply they are checking with the help of load conditions. This is the one of the example in Russia. Here we have to observe onto the structure they are simply giving some quantity of load, and simply they are testing how much amount of load should be beared by the structure. Is there any exterior grouting is required or not? That means after the grouting, simply they are checking the condition. It is a simply a point load. Here also we have to observe the total structure is demolishing, and simply they are going for some quantities of changing. That means totally excavation is taking place. After the excavation they are going for constructing a periphery wall around these columns by using these jet groutings. That means simply onto the periphery we have to observe the pink line is there. That means the pink line shows the pink line means it is simply a affected portion due to this sea, so coastal erosions. Those coastal erosions also simply we have to arrest by using this jet groutings on the periphery of this coastal area. Here also the simply water is intruding into the soil. Due to the intrusion of this water, there may having a chance of contamination of groundwater. So that those contamination we have to arrest by simply doing this jet grouting onto the structures. That means onto the periphery of this surrounded coastal area. Some of the structure is simply collapsed in a particular area. Those collapsed portions simply they are using some repairing techniques with the help of this structural grouting. Here also repairing works are taken care before repair and after repair, how the structure will looks like. The total structure is constructed uh, before a canal, so that the canal is continuously flowing. Due to the flow of this canal water, there may be some uh, problem to the foundation, so that those problems also we have to arrest by using this jet grouting techniques up to a particular depth. Here also they are having simply a small river or a small lake below before the structure. Those conditions also we have to arrest by using different geopolymer sheets and these piling techniques and grouting techniques. This is also one of the example of construction of this jet grouted piles to the structure. And we have to observe the holes they have drilled to the structure, and simply they are injecting this grouting material. This is the total shipyard. So shipyard is also having a tendency of erosion. Those erosion also they have to control by using this jet grouting. It is also one of the business area. Those business area also they are having some threat due to this flow of this structure. Means simply flow means some of the cases the structure is falling lightly or sliding. Those conditions also they have to arrest by using these grouting techniques. These things also we have to observe. That means a plenty number of examples we have given. We have to understand. Here also we have to observe the total structure. That means the flow of water is simply arresting by constructing these barrier like columns. Those columns will arrest the flow of water. Normally these kind of structures we have to observe in case of dams. That means uh, on the surroundings of the dam we have to construct these powerhouses to operate these turbines and other electrical equipments. For the purpose of this they have to construct rooms for the purpose of operation. Here after the alignment is over, simply they are doing this grouting work by a forceful pressure. Here also simply they are pumping this kind of means simply they are drawing the water. After the drawing is over, simply they are pumping this material into the ground. Here also the total structure, that means the total subsurface is treated with this soil cement base. The total pink portion whatever he is showing is, it is a jet grouted portion along the periphery of the structure. On one hand we have to observe some of the small dots, those are simply foundations. Here also we have to observe a plan to the structure. It is also a construction work which was using this jet grouting technique. Simply they are using some scaffolding. After the scaffolding is over, they are using this jet grouting equipments for filling the material due to a lack of time. Okay, the it is a small canal or any water structure. Those water structure is simply they are repairing. Here also they are directly creating a forceful pressure. The pipes they are giving some quantity of pressure we have to observe. On the each side of this pipeline we have to observe the small like straw stream like pressure is simply going. Those are simply due to this pressure the stream is moving. This is the total explanation about this jet grouting, how they have to use these different kinds of equipments for pumping this fluid at a high speed, and different case studies in different areas. All those things we have explained. Thank you.